Hi, I'm Becky Walsh, and today we're going to be talking about communications for well-being within a corporate environment. A little bit slightly aside to some of the stuff that I normally talk about, but I think that this is a really important subject, and I think it's so important that I'm breaking it down into 3 individual films. So once you've watched this film, do feel free to move on to the next film, and don't forget to share, subscribe and comment if you've got any corporate communication problems going on in your place of work at the moment and want to ask my advice. Then do feel free to put your questions in the comments below. That is not a problem, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So this first film is about physical corporate communications. Now, we've all seen that film of Donald Trump, who was lauding and standing over his opponent politically, and of course trying to throw her off her thoughts and off her game. So people sometimes will come and stand over you in order to do that. So if you're one of those people that stand too close to people, just be a little bit mindful that sometimes that's intimidating, especially for people who are a little bit smaller or shorter than you. It's kind of a bit of an uncomfortable thing to do. Something else somebody might do is come over to your desk and quite absent-mindedly just decide to pick up your pencil, have a little chat with it, move it around a little bit, and then put it down completely in a different place to where you put it. That's kind of understandable. We all kind of do things like that. We don't think much of it. But what you might not realise is actually that is a power dynamic breach. You're taking something that belongs to somebody else, messing about with it and putting it down. Even worse is the person who will pick something up that's on your desk and move it and carry on the conversation. That, even subconsciously, they might not realise that they're doing it, but it's a way of saying, I can do what I want with you. So I can do what I want with your stuff, I can do what I want with you. And even if it's not intended that way, that's kind of how it makes you feel. You know, we understand that most of communication is non-verbal. It's in the breath, in the space in between the words. So when somebody's body language is a little bit off, or their attitude, or if you've got a face like mine, if I'm annoyed with you, it is all over my face. I've got very small eyes and I just can't help it because they go, and then I look really mean. It's just unfortunate. So let me just check my notes. Sitting opposite people might seem kind of odd, but if you ever do any people watching in bars, people watching in cafes, something that you notice in the way that guys sit next to each other, they'll always kind of like sit like that. They don't sit opposite each other. They always sit kind of like slightly side on, you know, a little bit. They're never like a Last Smith and Jones. They're always slightly side on. And the reason being, there seems to be a neural trigger that happens when you directly go straight for somebody face to face like that. It makes people feel quite uncomfortable. So if you move your chairs, especially if it's a man talking to a man or a woman talking to a man, in difficult conversations with guys, you're better sort of sitting side by side than you are directly sitting opposite each other. If you find yourself directly sitting opposite each other in an uncomfortable conversation, just move yourself sideways on and kind of talk like that. It just stops the man going into a fight or flight response. I do wonder in relationships as to why we have more arguments in cars, because we're not sitting next to each other, facing each other. We feel that we can't see the facial expressions of the person, and we feel maybe we can be a little bit more honest or upfront about our feelings about things. So that's something to consider. And then lastly, lose the desk. Sorry, did I make you jump? Quite often sitting opposite a desk in those kinds of conversations is really tricky because there's just this thing in between you. So if you can get on the corner of a desk, if you need a desk there to be there at all, so that one's on one side of the corner and one's on the other side of the corner, that's a lot less thing in the way. Obviously it can be really weird if there's a desk there and you normally sit behind the desk and you come all the way round. Be careful of kind of like that's coming across as sexually inappropriate behaviour. But really, I think when it comes to kind of like physicality with a person, just be really quite mindful, because it's amazing how you can make someone feel intimidated. And what happens when someone's intimidated is they go straight into the amygdala part of the brain. They go into the fight or flight response. They can't think of anything kind of to say. They're reactionary rather than ideas based, because they're not in the frontal cortex of the mind. And the frontal cortex, you could be coming up with some cracking ideas, but the person can actually talk about their thoughts and feelings and where things are for them from the frontal cortex, but not from the neocortex. They can't talk about things when they're in that space. And so that means when they've got the adrenaline rushing around in their system, it's that thing where you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh, I wish I'd said this, or I wish I'd said that, or I know the answers to all of these things and I didn't speak up. So you're not doing the person that you're speaking to any favours by intimidating them in any even small way. That's not great for business either. And if you are the kind of person that is doing it deliberately to intimidate, get off my film. All right, that's it from me. Really good to speak to you. Don't forget, more films coming up on how we can write better emails and also how we can be better in our in-person conversations as well. Join me then.